Kam Kaudi Vajnam, Pangum Langa Tegirim, Yatkipa Tadam Vande, Shigo Tinatarinam, Om Ajnana Timanasya, Sunam Sunam Sulakam, Shakcho Unmilitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnu Padaya Subhastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Saraswati Namini. Namo Vishnu Padaya Subhastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Srihavadi Paskachaya Dasatarini. So good morning. Today we will discuss the second chapter, Divinity and Divine Service, of the first canto. So last week we have heard the sages of Naimisaranya asked 6 questions to Sutta Goswami. And now Sutta Goswami will begin to reply. And he starts replying with offering his obeisance to his spiritual master, to Sukadev Goswami. Because Sutta Goswami heard the Bhagavatam from Sukadev Goswami in the presence of Maharaj Pariksit. So let's hear how he glorifies his spiritual master, that says, "Let me offer my respectful obeisance unto that great sage is of course Sukadev Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home, without undergoing reformation by the sacred thread or the ceremonies observed by the higher caste, his father, Vyasadeva, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'O my son!' Indeed, only the trees which were absorbed in the same feelings of separation echoed in response to the bereaved father." So we see Sukadev Goswami, if he was liberated from birth, that when we come in this world, we take birth in ignorance, but he was liberated, full of bliss since birth. It's very interesting. Of course, Sukadev Goswami, it is said he remained in the womb of his mother for 16 years. He did not want to come out. Lord Krishna had to come and to speak to him, to promise, yes, if you take birth, you will be liberated. You will be liberated. Don't fear. Then after 16 years, he agreed to take birth. And he came out of the womb. He had the body of 16 years old, practically. When he came out of the womb, he just walked to the forest and disappeared. And we hear here his father, Vyasadeva, cried out, "Oh my son," but only the trees echoed. Of course, later, Vyasadeva tricked him and got him back into the ashram. He sent out his disciples in the forest. He sent to recite slokas of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, especially the slokas related to the Gopi Gita and so on. Tavakatam vitam tapta jivanam kavrititam kalma safam shavmangalam shimata tatam purichinati buvidachana. That the verse in which the gopis glorify those who distribute the message of the Bhagavatam. But it is interesting because Sukadeva Goswami was Atmaram. He had no desires to fulfill in this world. He was self-satisfied. But still, he became attracted to these verses of the Bhagavatam. Because if one is liberated, one can relish hearing about Krishna and feel great transcendental pleasure. Yeah. That Machita Machita Prana Bodhi Antas Prashparam Kati Antas Mamniti Antus Sharanantusha. Then one takes pleasure in hearing and conversing about it. That means that beyond the liberated platform there is a higher pleasure. A pleasure that is found in absorption in hearing about Krishna's pastimes. There is spiritual activity beyond liberation that otherwise, if it would not be spiritual, why would Sukadeva Goswami become attracted to it as Atmaram? He had no material desire, no tinge of sex desire, it's all gone. He did not have that, but still he felt attracted to these pastimes. That, of course, then, of course, Sri Goswami continues glorifying his spiritual master. Let me offer my respectful obeisance unto him, Sukha, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge after having personally assimilated it by experience. We spoke it for the compassion of the common man in this world, that and he had assimilated it by experience. And that's an interesting point. We know on the spiritual platform, the Svarup of Sutta Goswami is that he was the favorite parrot of Srimati Radharani. So he was very, very dear to Srimati Radharani. We'll see in the 10th canto, he never spoke the name of Srimati Radharani. When he would have spoken this name, the speaking of the Bhagavatam would have been finished, because he would enter into ecstasy and could not speak anymore. But he mentions Srimati Radharani in the Bhagavatam. He's using the word Araditam. Araditam, the best worshipper of Krishna. That's how he related to Srimati Radharani. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada said, yes, So, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport of 1, 2, 3. Yes, this Bhagavatam is a natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. And of course, Srila Sukadeva Goswami was a thoroughly realized master of the Vedanta Sutra. And therefore, the Bhagavatam is his personally realized commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. The purport Srila Prabhupada writes, he explains this point further, not in a commentary, but in a conversation. He says, Vedanta Sutra begins with when one is inquisitive to understand the absolute truth. And the first question is Tata Brahma Jignasa, inquiry about Brahman. So Brahman is described in a nutshell. Brahman means the origin of everything, Janmadhyasya Yataha. So the whole Vedanta is a description of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada says. So the Bhagavatam is a real commentary of Vedanta Sutra. I will read a part of this purport. There is no point in arguing that a materialistic man can be happy. No materialistic creature, be he the great Brahma or an insignificant ant, can be happy. Everyone tries to make a permanent plan for happiness, but everyone is baffled by the laws of material nature. Therefore, the materialistic world is called the darkest region of God's creation. Yet the unhappy materialist can get out of it simply by desiring to get out. So God says simply by desiring to get out. Unfortunately, they are so foolish that they do not want to escape. Therefore, they are compared to a camel who relishes thorny twigs because he likes the taste of the twigs mixed with blood. He does not realize that it is his own blood and that his tongue is being cut by the thorns. Similarly, to the materialist, his own blood is as sweet as honey, and although he is always harassed by his own material creations, he does not wish to escape. Such materialists are called karmis. Out of hundreds of thousands of karmis, only a few feel tired of material engagement and desire to get out of the labyrinth. Such intelligent persons are called jnanis. The Vedanta Sutra is directed to such jnanis. But Srila Vyasadeva, being the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, could foresee the misuse of the Vedanta Sutra by unscrupulous man, and therefore he personally supplemented the Vedanta Sutra with the Bhagavad Purana. That is not the name of the Bhagavatam. It is clearly said that this Bhagavatam is the original commentary on the Brahma Sutras. Srila Vyasadeva also instructed the Bhagavatam to his own son, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, who was already at the liberated stage of transcendence. Srila Sukadeva Goswami realized it personally and then explained it. By the mercy of Srila Sukadeva, the Bhagavad Vedanta Sutra is available for all those sincere souls who want to get out of material existence. Now, 1, 2, 4. That we know this verse. Narayanam namaskritam naram chiva narotam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of Godhead Narayan and the Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, and the Mother Saraswati, the gods of learning, and unto Shilavya, slave the altar. It's 1, 2, 4. Interesting is, Sutta Goswami is also teaching us here that how to pray before reciting the Bhagavatam, offering respect to the spiritual master, previous acharyas, then offering respect to the Bhagavatam with that verse. So, in Srila Prabhupada writes, but only question and answers about Krishna can actually satisfy the soul. Sutta Goswami therefore says that Sanaka Rishi, who is the head of the sage of Namaisaranya, who asked the questions, because Sanaka Rishi's questions relate to Krishna, Samprasno, they are glorious. So there's a commentary of Jiva Goswami, which is interesting. He notes in Krishna's Sandarbha, so Jiva Goswami wrote a Sat Sandarbha, 6 Sandarbhas, and they are the essence of the Gaudiya Vaishnava theology. And in the Krishna Sandarbha, he writes that in Bhagavatam 125, Sutta describes the questions as excellent, because they are auspicious for the world, loka mangalam, and capable of completely satisfy the self, yanatma supashidati. And now Sutta Goswami is going to answer the first question. And the first question was, so what is the ultimate good for people? The Shreyas. Shreyas means the ultimate good. The ultimate good. The immediate good is called Preyas. People want Sanskritization now. That's Preyas. But the Shreyas is the ultimate good for the soul, not for the body. Because we are the soul, we have to feed the soul. And the soul wants to be connected with Krishna, through bhakti, through love. And Sutta Goswami here is going to define that love, that pure love. What is it? What is this pure love? So it says, Savai pumsa paroda dharmo yato bhaktiadoksai ahait kapatyata yayatma shubhasidati. So it says, the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which man can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So that is Param Dharma, the highest occupation is activity of the soul. This is spiritual activity, being connected in service to the Supreme Soul, Krishna, the source of everything, as we are describing in the first verse of the Bhagavatam. This is Krishna. This is pure devotion. So we see it's bhakti. Bhakti adoksai. It's loving devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead who cannot be perceived by our material senses. And first, Srila Prabhupada says in Nectar of Devotion, our senses must become purified. Our senses must become purified, and then we can perceive the Supreme Lord with our spiritual senses. So two qualities, ahaituk patiyata. Ahaituk means just out of love for Krishna, not to get anything in return. Apratiyata means always. One must do that always. Whatever one is doing should be devotional service. That is liberated action, but it's not easy to attain. That we have mostly all also our own agenda. So Srila Prabhupada discusses this pure devotion in his purport. He writes, the relation is one of the servant and the served. It is transcendental and is completely distinct from our experience, immaterial existence. This relation of servant and the served is the most congenial form of intimacy. One can realize it as devotional service. So it's intimate, it is confidential. Everyone should engage himself in that transcendental loving service of the Lord, even in the present conditioned state of material existence. That will give one the clue of the actual life and please him to complete satisfaction. So if you want to get inner satisfaction, this is the only way, Srila Prabhupada said. Whatever you want to do in this material world, you never will feel satisfaction. People desire intimacy, but because they are self-centered, which ultimately places them in the position of exploiter, their attempts to find intimacy or the physical, emotional, or intellectual levels actually push true intimacy away. On the other hand, serving Krishna, as Sutta Goswami indicates, feels true because it is deeply pleasing to the soul. It is that what we want. This morning I spoke to the Bhaktivedanta students in Vrindavan. They are entering the 10th canto now. And this 10th canto is about Krishna and his devotees, and how he relates with his devotees, and his devotees relate with him in different rasas. And that is relishable for the pure soul to the greatest extent. That is what we all want. That is what will give us satisfaction. So Srila Prabhupada writes the word ahaituke means without reason. Without reason. We do whatever we do in this world, we have our motives. But that's without motive, without reason. Very strange for someone in this world. A pure devotee does not render loving service to the personality of God it for any cause or any benefit, material or spiritual. This is the first symptom of unadorned devotion. Anya bilasta sunyam. He has no desire to fulfill by rendering devotional service. Next, in text 7, Sutta Goswami will answer the second question. And you may remember the second question we came across in the first chapter was, please tell us what's the essence of religion. What is the essential recommendation of all the Shastras? So Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayochita Yanyat Yasivarahyam Jnana Sayat Ahai to come. By rendering devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So that is a very important point here, that if you serve Krishna, you become purified. And purification means you get knowledge. You start to understand, I'm this soul, I'm a spirit soul, I'm eternal. And I should not take shelter in temporary things. Temporary things which are there only for a moment. I should not think everything is mine, because soon I'm out of the body. What's the use? That, no, one gets knowledge and then one becomes naturally detached. Oh, it's temporary. Soon everything is over in this world. But my relationship with Krishna is eternal. All these illusory relationships in this world and all this attachment and so on, soon it's all gone. It's all for nothing. So one gets knowledge and becomes detached. And that's realized knowledge. It's not the kind of knowledge that the jnanis get. So Prabhupada writes, the jnani mentioned in this text does not refer to the knowledge that leads to impersonal saucha liberation, merging into the existence of the body of the Lord. Rather, it refers to knowledge of the sweetness of the Lord's attributes. Such knowledge leads one to become firmly attached to Krishna and detached from everything else. What is that experience? What Srila Prabhupada explains here. What is he speaking about? To illustrate that, he refers to a verse of the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, verse 42. A verse he quotes many times. Bhakti persona bhava virakti yatra seta trika eka kala papatya manasya tasnatasyu tustipustiksutayo nugasam. Devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord and detachment from other things, these three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. So, three things is saying. To perform this pure devotional service, and you get direct experience of the Lord, he says. And because you have that higher taste, you become detached of all other things. That three things: devotion, direct experience, and attachment. So devotion is very important to attain. Ananya Bhakti. That devotion brings one beyond liberation. That or the experience is beyond liberation. First, it starts with meditation on Krishna, and then love is added, devotion. But before you can meditate, then you must be able to fix your mind on Krishna. And if you have so many material desires, it will be very difficult. So Prabhupada writes further in the Prabhupada, that is a sign of a pure devotee. One who is a pure devotee has all other good qualities, namely knowledge, attachment, etc. But one who has only knowledge or detachment is not necessarily well acquainted with the principles of the Bhakti cult. Bhakti is a supermost occupation. of the human being. So now we are going to the next session. So the title is Only Bhakti is to be gained through the performance of one's work. Sutta Goswami, so he now is going to add an emphasis to this assertion of the importance of bhakti. Says the occupational duty a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of God. And that is a strong statement. It means whatever you do, if it's not connected with Krishna, then it is Shrama eva kevalam. It is useless activity. That in 128, here Sutta Goswami speaks the same truth as spoken in 126, Savaitu Saparodhamma. But in negative terms, it says, if one performs his duty properly but fails to attain this attraction to Krishna at Katha or hearing about Krishna, he will have acted uselessly. Shameva Kevalam. So Prabhupada writes, and that is a very sweet purport and very significant sentences. You see, the need of the spirit soul is that he wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire for complete freedom. Even he wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe. He wants to see the free light and the spirit. That complete freedom is achieved when he meets the complete spirit, the personality of Godhead. There is a dormant affection for God within everyone. Spiritual existence is manifested through the gross body and mind in the form of perverted affection for the gross and subtle matter. Therefore, we have to engage ourselves in occupational engagement that will evoke our divine consciousness. This is possible only by hearing and chanting the divine activities of the Supreme Lord. And any occupational activity which does not help one to achieve attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of God is certain to be simply a waste of time. Further, great sages conclude that the main purpose of occupational duties is to gain ultimate liberation from material life, apavargasya, not material gain. And gains that do arise from one's engagement in the ultimate occupational service should never be used to increase sense pleasure. People might consider themselves religious, but Sutta Goswami defines a standard. Our dharma is meant to give Krishna pleasure. The real dharma is the activity of the soul. Sutta Goswami says. And as a soul, as a part and parcel of Krishna, we are meant to give Krishna pleasure. And you cannot change that. There is nothing else in this world that will give us inner satisfaction. It's not possible, he says. That because it's inherent to our soul. It is the activity of the soul. It is that what they do in the spiritual world, all those liberated souls. And therefore, you cannot change it. That devotional service is the dharma. And dharma does not mean religion. It cannot be translated really in English, Srila Prabhupada said. He translated somewhat as occupational duties. Or occupational duties of the soul, if you can say, but it has the quality that one serves the Supreme Lord. And that is a quality which is inherent of the soul. The soul is a servant of the Supreme Lord. And you cannot change it. Like the quality of water, it's wet, you cannot change it, Srila Prabhupada says. And that's the meaning of Dharma. Sanatan Dharma, eternal occupation of the spiritual. So life duties should lead us to pure bhakti. Karma, jnana, yoga, and the lower levels of bhakti cannot satisfy the soul. Therefore, they are preliminary activities for those who cannot take directly to devotional service because they have no knowledge of Krishna. That's the problem. When we honestly act to please Krishna, Krishna will be satisfied. When Krishna is satisfied, we will be fully satisfied. Then what then should we desire while living in the material world? Srila Prabhupada says. That Sutta Goswami explains in text 10. One should desire only a healthy life of self-preservation, since the human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's work. In the purport of this text 10, Srila Prabhupada mentions, seekers of the absolute truth are never allured by unnecessary engagement in sense gratification, because the serious student seeking the absolute truth is always overwhelmed with the work of researching of the truth. All levels of devotees should be wary of thoughts that allow them to desire a percentage of the results of their work for themselves. And then Sutta Goswami defines the absolute truth. And that's also a very famous verse. Vadanta tattatva vidastatvam hyatyanam atvayam prameti paramatmeti bharvaniti sapyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So the absolute is the one non-dual substance comprising the totality of existence. Individuals perceive this substance differently according to how they approach it, but here is only one absolute truth. Approaching the absolute truth to Jnana reveals it as Brahman, as undifferentiated oneness. Approaching it to Yoga causes one to see Paramatma, the Supersoul. A Bhakta or a lover of the Supreme Personality of Godhead will by Krishna's grace see the absolute truth as Bhagavan, see Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you have Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami says, we have the absolute truth, and you have three qualities of the absolute truth, or three aspects, and they are all three the absolute. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. But the absolute truth is only completely manifested with all qualities as Bhagavan, because Brahman is the effulgence of his transcendental body, and Paramatma is his plenary portion. So that is yes. And Jiva Goswami said, if you know Bhagavan has his energies, material and spiritual energies, they come from him. And that's what the impersonalists cannot explain. What are these energies? They say there is only Brahman, but yeah, they cannot explain the source of these energies. But we know the source is Janmadhyasya, it's Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada explains that the various perspectives of the absolute truth, so he explained these various perspectives on the absolute truth, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And they are qualitatively the same. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of the Upanishads, or it's called Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and as Bhagavan by the devotees, so 3 levels of realization. In other words, Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead, is the last word in the absolute truth. Paramatma is the partial representation of the personality of Godhead, and impersonal Brahman is the glowing effulgence of the personality of Godhead, as the sun rays are to the sun god. Less intelligent students of either of the above schools sometimes argue in favor of their own prospective realization, but those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know well that the above 3 features of the absolute truth are different views seen from different angles of views. But now, how can we realize this absolute truth in full? Sutta Goswami says, the seriously inquisitive students or sage, well equipped with knowledge and attachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. The highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's occupation is to please the personality of Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada, he asserts this point. Devotional service, which is based on the foreground of full knowledge combined with detachment from material association, and which is fixed by the oral reception of the Vedanta Shruti, is the only perfect method by which a seriously inquisitive student can realize the absolute truth. So further, Srila Prabhupada mentions none of the 3 aspects of the absolute truth, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, can be realized without practicing bhakti. So that means the jnanis and the yogis cannot realize Brahman and Paramatma unless there is bhakti. And it's interesting. Additionally, in the Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami cites Sridhar Swami's statement that the knower of the Absolute say that wealth artha is not for sense gratification. Its purpose is only to preserve one's life. The purpose of life is not to attain wealth or the heavenly planets, therefore, but to know the Absolute Truth. Then further. So by that we understand Bhakti is supreme, the preeminence of Bhakti. But then how should we act? Now Sutta Goswami describes how to attain this perfection. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remembering, and worship the personality of God, that is the protector of the devotees. So that's a summary of the main principles of the Bhagavatam. In one verse, everything is there. Srila Prabhupada writes, all activities should be centered on Krishna. Just imagine how quickly our lives would become sublime if we were able to practice with one pointed attention all our hearing, chanting, remembering, and service, offering them only for Krishna's pleasure. Srila Prabhupada wanted to facilitate conditioned souls throughout the world to come to that standard. So in the purpose, he explains why Krishna should be the object of everyone's glorification. Any man from any social status becomes a well-known man in human society within a very short time. If is simply glorified truly or falsely in the daily newspapers. Sometimes political leaders of a particular party are also advertised by newspaper propaganda, and by such a method of glorification, an insignificant man becomes an important man within no time. But such propaganda by false glorification that by false glorification of an unqualified person cannot bring any good either for the particular man or for society. But yes, so that is the process which is described. Glorifying, remembering and worshiping the Supreme Lord. But then one may wonder, how can I remove the karmic reactions that bind me to this world and cause me to value other things than Krishna? The Goswami replies, 1-15. Intelligent men cut through the binding knots of the reactionary work by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? Just by remembering the Supreme Lord, our karma is destroyed. Srila Prabhupada mentions our karma, as well as our tendencies that spring from that karma, is born of actions in this and previous lives. Karma is thus compared to a tangle of knots that binds us to this world. The sharp words of remembering Krishna slashes through these knots and thus cuts through our material existence. Knowing this as a result of remembering Krishna, an intelligent person naturally attempts to practice remembrance. So a comment on Shiva Goswami, that meditation on Krishna is compared to a sword, and that the soul's contacts with material elements that produce false ego, also generate material bodies, are cut by this sword. Further, this is from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. In his Bhajan Rasya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur lists 4 causes of this misfortunes. And that's very interesting. Why is this heart so not? Why is this heart not so difficult to cut? That why does it cause so much problems? What is the nature of this knot? Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives 4 causes why this knot is there in our heart. So it says, first, aparat, offenses toward the Lord's name, his devotees, and other living entities. Offenses. But before he says, Tattva Brahma, the philosophical misunderstanding based on illusion about our identity, illusion about Supreme Lord, illusion about sadhana and prema bhakti, and illusion about subjects unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. So illusion about our identity, who we are, we don't know who we are, identifying with the body. We don't know the Supreme Lord. That most people don't know what Bhagavan means. And then you have the misconceptions. They think the Absolute is only Brahman or it's only Paramatma. But it's very rare one who knows the nature of the Supreme Lord. Illusion about sadhana. What is the right sadhana? And that will be described in text 16-21 now, how bhakti progresses. All the details will be there, and it's a nice analysis, and I prepared it to look at together next time to all these stages described here. and with referring to Vishwanath's Chakravarti course, Madhuraka Nambini. So the first illusion, first cause of our misfortune is Tattva Brahma. We have a misunderstanding about who we are, and who Krishna is, and what's the process to get there. That's then apparat to the Lord's holy name, to his devotees, all the living entities. Then Asat Trishna, that's the third thing, the third thing. Thirst for the temporary, for desires for material objects, heavenly comforts, mystic powers, and impersonal liberation. That thirst for enjoyment of temporary things, which are so just temporary, it's fleeting in time. That, and the fourth one is Rida Darbalyam, weakness of heart. Weakness of heart, I find fault with others. I want a desire for fame. I'm attached to things which are not related to Krishna. So this is these four causes of our misfortune, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. But after hearing that and looking into our own heart, we may say, if we are honest, what can I do? That as easy and important as this process may be, I don't have yet a taste for chanting or hearing Krishna Katha. Srila Sutta Goswami will answer that question and will describe the process to get this taste and how to progress in bhakti. And we will discuss the second half of this second chapter next Sunday, if Krishna willing. Are there any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Mother Vinod.
Hare Krishna. Haribol. When you were saying about the element of bhakti has to be present even amongst the jnanis and the yogis, I was a little bit unsure, because I can understand with the Paramatmavadis that they have because in bhakti there's an understanding that there has to be rasa, a loving exchange, for it to be, possible. So with the Paramatmavadis, I can understand they meditate on the Vishnu form in the heart, and they must have some sort of a element of bhakti there to, meditate. But with the jnanis, impersonalists, they don't have you can't have a bhakti with an energy only or a light. Bhakti implies that there's a personality. So how do we understand that?
Yeah, that's a valid point. That it's also mentioned in the 11th canto that all these yoga processes are described again by Lord Krishna to Uddhava, and he says for each of these processes they cannot attain perfection unless there is a tinge of bhakti. A tinge of bhakti. Yeah. So that's interesting. A little bhakti. But the problem is that there are different kinds of impersonalists. So we cannot put them all on the same level. Yeah. But if we speak about the Mayavadis, those who deride Krishna's position, avachanti mamudam, manusam tanam ashvitam, thinking I'm an ordinary person. Krishna is just the product of Brahman and is a representation of the illusory, temporary material energy. That's offensive. So there cannot be a question, there cannot be question about any tinge of bhakti there. Therefore, Krishna say, it is said in the 10th canto, Yen year vindakshvi muktamani nastvestavava avisuddha buddhaya, that they imagine themselves liberated, but because their intelligence is impure, they are not liberated. And they fall down from their imagined position. So that's one kind of impersonalist. Unfortunately, they cannot get any results. That even their merging with Brahman is imagined. But you have another kind of Mayavadis, and they are called Brahmavadis. And the Brahmavadis, they don't say that Krishna's body is material. They don't say that. But they make a mistake. That they think, they say, okay, Krishna is spiritual, but higher than Krishna is Brahman. Therefore, they are called Brahmavadis. Yeah. So that's not that's a mistake, but they are not offensive toward Krishna. So they may feel some affection for Krishna. And they can attain perfection in Brahman. And we see the example of that by the 4 Kumaras. They attained Brahman perfection, otherwise they could not go to the gates of Vaikuntha. There must have been a tinge of bhakti. Yeah. Of course, their father, Brahma, was a bhakti practitioner. So they had the example of their father, but still they were the embodiment of processes of liberation, 4 kinds of processes. They are mentioned in the 11th canto. I forgot them, but they have named these 4 processes. But they are Brahmavadis. But does that clarify, Mother Vinod?
Yeah, that makes sense. That has to be a tinge of like affection or attachment, like you were saying. Yeah.
So it's an interesting point.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That next time I will have other slides and go a little deeper in the process. Did I do a bit better than last time? I tried to improve.
Yeah, I liked the slides. Yeah.
Yeah. There will be more details next time. Thank you. Any other question? Okay, then I look forward to see you online next week. That for the second part of the second chapter of the Bhagavatam, which is a very important part. It describes the whole process of bhakti in detail. That it's good for us to look at it to see if we are on track. Are we doing the right thing? Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.